Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we will go into the second video of a two-part series on the 2023-24 Detroit Red Wings. In the last video we looked into the main statistical findings regarding the whole team, both within and outside of the Excel goal spreadsheet itself. In this one we will look at the roles of 5 key players within the Red Wings squad, look at the moves that define the summer off-season, determine what the team needs in free agency, and also determine who Steve Yzerman could promote to the main squad within the next 12 months from the prospect pool. We will now begin by looking at the Red Wings' 4 top goal scorers from last season. The Detroit Red Wings had 21 different goal scorers and exactly 50 different goaltenders that they managed to find their way past, the empty net not counting in that total. We will go into the 4 main goal scorers on the team and then look at another important player that has very interesting pieces of data. Dylan Larkin was the team's leading goal scorer at 33, and second in points was 69 through all 82 games of the season. Just over half of his goals, 17 in 2023-24, were snapshots, with 12 being wrist shots, 2 tip-ins, and 2 backhands. 13 goals were struck into the bottom left corner, with 10 landing in the top right corner. Interestingly enough, he only tipped 1 goal into the bottom right, that being the overtime winning goal against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the third last game of the season. 21 of his 33 goals were in the low slot, 11 of those were low slot center. 3 of his goals came against the Buffalo Sabres, but with 3 completely different netminders: Eric Comrie, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and the empty net. Sergei Bobrovsky, Joonas Korpisalo, Ilya Samsonov, and Cam Talbot, the latter of which is becoming a Red Wings goaltender next season, were the 4 goaltenders he scored twice on. Every other goalie was scored on once, and 3 of Larkin's goals came with the net empty. 9 of his goals with Detroit were to take the lead, and tying the score was almost equal priority as he netted 8 to draw level with opponents. 12 were to increase the Wings' lead, and just 2 were to bring them back in games, these being the goal against Dallas in January that brought deficit back to 5-3, and the goal against Pittsburgh in April that brought the deficit back to 5-4. 20 were scored at Little Caesars Arena and 13 away. 15 of the goals were scored in the third period alone, usually between the 11th and 15th minute of the period. 9 were scored in the second, 7 in the first, and 2 as overtime winners. Lucas Raymond was second in scoring, tallying 31 goals in open play, as well as 2 shootout winning goals. Just like with Larkin, more than half of those, 20, were scored from the low slot, 13 specifically being low slot center. 9 were scored from the high slot, 4 of those also being in the central areas. Only 3 came from the points, coincidentally 1 for each side of the attacking zone. The only remaining goal of the final tally was a wraparound from behind the net that opened the scoring in the game against the Columbus Blue Jackets on the 11th of November. Unlike Larkin, he was more consistent with wrist shots, scoring 16 goals, nearly 50% of his season's tallies in that way. He had 12 snapshot goals, 6 of which came in later parts of the season and against the same opposition: 2 against Buffalo, 2 against Columbus, and 2 against Montreal. The other 5 goals he scored were 3 backhands, 2 of which came against Pittsburgh, 1 wraparound against Columbus, and 1 slap shot against Tampa Bay. I mentioned how the bottom left side of the net was the preferred area of the net to score for the Red Wings, and with Raymond, he is no exception. Exactly a third of his goals, 11, were in the bottom left corner, 5 of those coming off wrist shots. Raymond also scored 7 bottom center goals and 7 bottom right. 5 goals were scored in the top right corner and 3 top left, but none directly top center. He knew how to score on Pittsburgh and Alex Nedeljkovic specifically, getting by the 2019 Calder Cup champion 5 times. 3 of those goals were wrist shots and the other 2 backhands, with 4 of his goals into the bottom left corner and the other bottom center. Buffalo, Columbus, and Tampa Bay were all teams in which Raymond scored 3 times against. But of those teams, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, again, and Daniil Tarasov were the only 2 goaltenders he scored on twice. Raymond scored twice when the NHL Global Series was held in his native Sweden. When on North American ice, he scored 18 goals at home and 13 away. He was responsible for tying the score 9 times, increasing the lead 7 times, taking the lead or decreasing the deficit 6 times each, and scoring an overtime or shootout winning goal 5 times. That said, the moments when he chose to score varied significantly. 11 of his goals came in the first period, 9 in the third, 8 in the second, and as mentioned moments ago, 5 came past the 60-minute mark. Alex DeBrincat was third in scoring with 27 goals. 12 of those were snapshots and 9 wrist shots, so those two modes of shot release amounted to nearly 80% of the total goals he scored in 2023-24. Of the 6 remaining, 4 were slap shots, 2 against Calgary specifically, and 2 were tip-ins, those scored against Pittsburgh and Washington. Approximately 63% of the goals he scored came from the low slot, but the most interesting thing is that he did not primarily score from the center within that range, but from the left. 12 were from the left side, 4 of which came in just 2 games against St. Louis and Toronto. 7 goals came from the high slots, but none from the center within that range. 6 were from the left and 1 from the right. It was interesting to go through the statistics and see the unique cases of players that do not use the central areas as their primary scoring space. David Perron was a similar case, a player that scored 7 of his 17 goals from the left, and Jake Wallman scored 9 out of his 12 from the left side. What sets DeBrincat apart is that he primarily plays at right wing. Perron is a left winger, and Wallman is primarily on the left defense. Those are players that use the left as their dominant side, but DeBrincat is versatile in that he can control the passing play and take decent, accurate shots on both wings. 3 of his goals came against one specific goaltender in one specific game. Dan Vladash of the Calgary Flames in the 6-2 victory on the 22nd of October. Against Vladash, he opened the scoring within the first 2 minutes, with his wrist shot landing in the bottom left corner, and would repeatedly aim for that side of the goal afterward, scoring another 2 into the top left corner off slap shots in the next 2 periods. Lukas Dostal, Jonas Johansson, Ilya Samsonov, and Charlie Lindgren were also scored on twice by DeBrincat over the 2023-24 season. Montreal and St. Louis were also teams scored on twice by the Michigan native, but both teams played 2 different goaltenders. To summarize all of this quite simply, if you have DeBrincat along the sides, relatively close to the net, and he has space, he can be a fairly reliable finisher. The 4th key player the Red Wings had that season, the last 20-plus goal scorer, was Patrick Kane, joining his 3rd Original Six club within a single calendar year by signing as a free agent in November and making his first appearance just a week and a half later. Kane had 20 goals over just 50 games, as well as an additional shootout winning goal in the last matchup of the season. He scored 6 times to take the lead, 5 to tie, 4 to increase the deficit, 3 overtime or shootout winning goals, and 2 goals to close the margin between Detroit and their opponents. As he has in his entire career, weaving his way around defenses and going into the low slot was no problem. 14 of his goals were in this range, but exactly half of those were on the right side. 6 other goals came from the high slot, and just 1 from the point, that being the power play goal that opened the scoring in Detroit's 5-0 rout of the Calgary Flames on the 17th of February. Kane was the most successful with his wrist shot, scoring 9. Not too far behind was his slapshot goal total, finishing with 8 in that category. He scored twice against Buffalo, Philadelphia, the New York Islanders, and Washington, with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen again, Carter Hart, Ilya Sorokin, and Charlie Lindgren in net for those different teams on all of them. There were some other players that made an impact on the 2023-24 season, the most important of which, from a statistical perspective, is Moritz Seider. The Red Wings selected playmaking defenseman Moritz Seider with the 6th overall pick in the 2019 NHL draft, and 5 years later, that appeared to be the right choice, as he is now considered one of the biggest steals of the first round, given where he was projected by NHL Central Scouting. He has been relatively consistent with his point totals, posting at least 30 assists on the board every season, and between 40 and 50 points. This year saw a career-best 9 goals at the professional level, matching his Schüler Bundesliga total in the German Under-16 League. One thing was very common with the data around the ones he scored in this campaign, and that was the accurate use of his point shot, as 6 of his goals came from the point, as highlighted in red in this graph. As highlighted in blue in the same graph, 5 of his 9 goals were in games against Eastern Conference opponents that the Red Wings were battling for wildcard places, or, in the case of the New York Rangers, already a playoff team by the time April arrived, and really, one of the best teams in the season from its very beginning. These 6 goals were split between slap shots and snapshots, with 3 of each, and 4 of them went into the bottom corners. All but 2 of Seider's goals came from the central areas, so that may be something that opponents look at when trying to defend against him, but the fact that he is not as much of a goal-scoring presence as a player like DeBrincat, Larkin, or Raymond on that same first line means that he may be pressured less often, and the team may turn to him when they have the defense all over the attacking zone and chasing the forwards around. Something similar to the opening strike from Niko Mikkola in Finland's quarterfinal victory against Sweden at the 2019 IHF World Championship. Maybe Seider reaches the 10-goal mark next year because of these sorts of scenarios becoming more common. Now it is time for the final section of the video, evaluating the summer moves the Red Wings made, how it affects their squad leading into the 2024-25 season, and what they need to do next with their prospect system. Detroit had a relatively busy offseason, and if they want to succeed next season, it is going to have to be even busier. Steve Yzerman extended 3-time Stanley Cup champion Patrick Kane's contract for another year, with the 35-year-old veteran being paid $4 million. And he also acquired recent second-time Stanley Cup champion Vladimir Tarasenko to a 2-year deal worth $4.75 million a year. Add in the fact that the Wings management picked up Jesse Kiskinen, another talented up-and-coming winger drafted last year in the 3rd round, into their prospect system through a trade with the Nashville Predators. But the problem they had was in their defense. I discussed in the first video how their defense was their statistical weakness in 2023-24, and with the single most important move they made to sign a player like Tarasenko, they just made that defensive situation a little more difficult. On 25th of June, Yzerman gave away a purely defensive-minded defenseman in Jake Wallman, plus Tampa's second-round pick in that upcoming draft for future considerations. A day later, that draft pick ended up becoming a defensive prospect in Leo Salin Wallenius, one of the top talents of the Swedish leagues in this year's class, and a player that can handle both the attack and defense with quick passing play. So, not only did the Red Wings give away one of their top defensive pieces, but they could also have selected a player that maybe would have been ideal to promote to at least the AHL level in at least 3 years, most likely one of the top defensive prospects in their system. With future considerations, the return is usually nothing. So the Red Wings effectively made this trade as a cap dump because they had Kane as a free agent, with Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider also hitting the free agent market as RFAs. The Red Wings also let go of Shane Gostisbehere, who officially signed a contract with the Carolina Hurricanes 3 years at $3.2 million per year. These 2 moves create a variety of problems to an already struggling defense. It means that Simon Edvinsson will likely be promoted to the NHL level almost immediately when the season starts, but it is unknown if he will last as a top 4 defenseman, given that he appears to be promoting to the second line. If the Wings have Ben Sherratt, Jeff Petrie, and Olli Määttä on 3 separate lines, then it may actually work, since all lines would have at least one player actively involved when the team is in direct, quick transition from the attacking zone to the defensive. But there is a downside to that, and it is the exact same thing. If the other defenseman, whether he's two-way or attacking-minded, cannot use the same speed and positioning to get involved in said transitions, there would be only one to act on those plays at the moment they happen. Edvinsson is okay in this regard, but Seider, for example, is a player that will leave the attacking zone with the forward line on occasion, and that could leave a gap for a 2-on-1 of sorts that Sherratt may have a hard time trying to manage by himself. Gustafsson jumps even further into the play than Seider or Edvinsson usually would, hence his point totals are more significant compared to the other two. So in the situation where he advances forward, they still need a forward to stay along the blue line to maintain some sort of stability in case of counters. The Red Wings still have approximately $17 million worth of cap space, and with Raymond and Seider still likely seeking long-term high-paying contracts, Steve Yzerman will need to leave enough space to sign one player on the defensive side to bring more experience to the squad. Looking at the prospect system, there are a few players that the Red Wings could bring to the top level, temporarily or permanently, maybe to see during preseason or the first month of the regular season if these players can last in the NHL. Marco Kasper is probably the most notable among the forwards. Kasper looks especially decent as a playmaker. He has never been close to a point-per-game scorer, but if there is one two-way forward that can quarterback both on even strength and special teams, with a decent amount of experience against players taller and heavier, it is him. Since getting drafted 8th overall in 2022, he played with Rögle in the SHL for a second consecutive season, sustaining the intense pressure he faced there while also registering an increase of almost 0.2 points per game. He then played the following season in North America, getting used to the smaller space of the North American ice sheet, and posted just under half a point a game with 35 and 71 during the regular season, then building on his case for promotion with 7 points in 9 playoff games. Nate Danielson, who Red Wings fans consider among their top 3 prospects, has had less experience against 22-plus-year-old players that are stronger than him, playing almost his entire 2023-24 season in WHL against and with only players his age. He has had only 2 games of experience in the AHL in Grand Rapids, but should be much better as he will gain a full-time promotion to that level of professional hockey in this upcoming autumn. If the Red Wings promote him, it will likely be in the later part of the 2025-26 season or the early part of the 2026-27 season. Axel Sandin Pellikka, the team's top defensive prospect, is continuing his career in the SHL with championship winners Skellefteå for at least one more season, so he will have some more time against players heavier than his 185-pound weight. And as a result, he will be better equipped than others within the system to handle under-pressure situations. All he would need once he leaves Sweden is to get used to the smaller North American rink space. Hence, Red Wings management should consider doing so as soon as possible and then promoting him in 2026-27 to the main team full-time. Goaltenders like Sebastian Cossa and Trey Augustine, projected to be among the top goaltending tandems in the NHL in future years, can play another year at other levels within the state of Michigan, since Cam Talbot and Alex Lyon would be in the present starter and backup roles. Either way, with all of these talents, as well as the recent selections the Wings have made in the draft in Vegas, the future is very bright regardless of whether this team makes the playoffs in this upcoming season. That is it for this one. If you found this interesting and have anything you would like to add on the Red Wings or the NHL that I did not cover here, feel free to comment down below and I will try and respond as soon as possible. If you found this video very interesting, please drop a like or subscribe. There are so many points about this team that could be made, both about its present and what it has for the future. I will not be doing a video like this for every NHL team this year, but I may consider doing something similar next season. There are quite a few topics that I will be covering in 2024-25. The Finnish national hockey teams will certainly be among them. I will most likely be doing something for the World Junior Tournament over the holidays in December, whether it is here or on the WordPress blog. And I will also be making videos on prospect reports, primarily from Liga and Mestis, but also from other European hockey leagues. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video real soon.